Hey, folks, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks, a weekly podcast. We have an orthopedics review for you today. Very cool interviews. First, I talked to Russell Powers of DePuy. We'll talk shoulder. We'll talk robotics. We'll talk history of orthopedics. He has a great overview of the industry. He's worked in the spine area. He's now working, again, at DePuy Synthes. He oversees shoulder reconstruction, sports medicine, and spine. So lots of interesting information to talk about with Russell. Later on, I conducted sort of a first-time interview for me, a first type of interview for me. I talked with Dr. Justin Barad. He is the founder and CEO of OssoVR. And we actually conducted this interview in the world of virtual reality. I was sent a pair of Oculus headsets from Osso, and Justin and I talked in the OssoVR OR. It was very, very cool. I think you'll hear from the interview that it very much felt as if I was talking with someone on stage somewhere, in person, face to face. I kind of could read the body cues, if not the facial cues. You really can't see their face, but I really enjoyed the conversation. It went on for about 45 minutes, but I cut it down a bit, and we extracted the part in which Justin was demonstrating a procedure and turned that into a video. We'll have that video up on social media. OssoVR is working on that right now, but very cool time talking with Justin Barad. Very, very interesting time talking with Russell Powers. So I know you'll enjoy this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Well, we're here with my podcast partner, Chris Newmarker, executive editor of Life Sciences. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. How are you doing, Tom?
Doing great. And we're welcoming back Danielle Kirsh. She's back for a second time.
Woo!
Senior
Welcome
editor
back,
at Mass Device. Danielle, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me again.
So are you, you've been chain smoking and coffee drinking and watching the Theranos trial, right? You just can't miss a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We'll get a wrap up from you a little later in the Newmarker's Newsmakers, which we'll start in a moment.
That'll be awesome.
But Chris, did you know that a lot of people listen to this podcast while they're jogging and exercising? How's that make you feel?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. We're contributing to the good health.
Keep people moving, keeping them informed about their industry, while they're getting good workout in. That's awesome.
Exactly. And Paul Grant of MedTech Innovator says he listens to us at 1.5 times speed. So I was thinking if you at some point during the Newmarker's Newsmaker could talk really fast, it might trick him into running even faster. Maybe we could help him get a personal best. Do you think you could do that? Maybe.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? I think we're going to.
Perfect. Yes. All right. So just weave that in there from time to time.
No.
Just totally screw up his gait. All right, we'll keep it a single speed. We don't want to freak
be careful.
people.
He lives in California. He's got to watch out for traffic. He's jogging around.
He's shaking his head right now, I'm sure.
I've got friendly Minnesota drivers where I live.
That's right. They just stop and let you pass even if you're not using the crosswalk. Although you would never not use a crosswalk. You're in Minnesota.
Yeah, they're everywhere. We got zebra walks, in our town.
Zebra walk. Oh, okay.
Those little special line walks where you just trust that the drivers will stop for you, when you cross.
I'm from Massachusetts. We don't trust anybody.
You don't do that.
I always tell my sons, look them in the eyes. Make sure you see their eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even here, I always have a thought in my head that's one way I'm going to get injured someday is just somebody's going to be on a phone or whatever driving around.
I did get.
It doesn't hurt that bad.
That's right. Did you? Well,
that's right.
We have a resident expert of getting hit by a car.
Danielle got hit by a car. Yeah, I'm glad you were okay. But yes, what were you doing when you got hit by the car?
I was riding my bike. I was minding my own business.
An electric bicycle.
Yes. I was going to the lake. I was having fun. I was only a mile from my house, and then she hit me. And then asked if she wanted me, if I wanted her to drive me home. And I was like, I'm not getting in a car with you.
The person who just hit you.
Yeah.
You and the bike were okay though?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We're all right.
I got hit by a cab in Boston walking to work one day when I was at the Boston Business Journal, and I was in a daze as if I would have been looking at a smartphone, but this was 1998, so there was no smartphone to be had. I was just a complete idiot and just kind of walked out the path of a cab, but I was fine.
Oh my God!
It's just a flesh wound. We were okay.
That's good. We all survived.
All right, this has been a great, really revealing conversation.
But I do want to ask Danielle: are you still driving the electric bike?
I am. One of my favorite Friday traditions is to go out and go get breakfast at one of my favorite local donut shops, and then ride my bike to the beach and kind of go through our feeds for the day.
That's great.
And that's in Cleveland where you live, and are you still doing the black helmet with the black bike? You still got that whole thing going on?
It's a silver bike now, but I have like a full face helmet because my mom told me to. Basically, she's like, if you're going to be going over 20 miles per hour, I'm going to need you to wear more than a normal bike helmet.
Full body armor.
That's awesome. I like the routine too. Donuts and beach.
That's a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us start this day or this podcast day or this next part of the podcast
with the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
You've picked our top 5 stories from our life sciences feeds, Mass Device, MDO, etc.
Fresh news.
Number 5. We have some big news, actually. A lot of great advances in medtech.
Yeah, it said something that our number 5 thing on the list. I mean, some weeks this would definitely be just like the number 1 news. But we've got so much stuff getting traffic this week. But Abbott, they got FDA approval of their Portico with a FlexNav TAVR. So this is Abbott entering the U.S. TAVR market. It's been dominated by Edwards Lifesciences and Medtronic, and now we're going to have Abbott in the space. We actually had Boston Scientific was competing in space too, and they threw in the towel on their Lotus program in late 2020. It's going to be a few more years before we see their next gen thing come out. So for now, it's turning into a 3-way race in the United States with TAVR, which is very hot space. Really cool technology. I know if Lord forbid I ever need to have a valve replaced, getting something delivered through a catheter versus having my chest cracked open sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. We had the episode a couple of weeks ago and you weren't available for that one, but we talked with Larry Wood from Edwards and Stan Rowe, who of course was the CEO of PVT. And Larry Wood said that they can actually do this procedure now under conscious sedation. So you don't even have to be under anesthesia anymore.
Wow.
So that's unbelievable.
Getting a heart valve replaced.
Yeah, right.
That's mind blowing. Wow.
But we'll have to revisit this topic, and we can talk to Abbott. And I think you actually have a conversation coming up sometime in the future. We'll be talking with Abbott, and maybe we'll get Medtronic as well and put together another TAVR episode. That was really fascinating way to learn about the space.
Good technology.
Cool. All right. That should have been number 1. You're right, in a normal week, but this is super MedTech week. So what's number 4?
Well, number 4. This is some bad news. It's Medtronic has another Class 1 level recall involving its Pipeline Flex embolization device. This one involves Pipeline Flex with Shield technology, and these are like thousands of devices. FDA is saying 59 reported malfunctions, 10 serious injuries, and 2 deaths.
Yikes!
So they're working on that one.
Oh, they of course had their hardware issue a couple of months ago. They had a stop sale on that. And I know I spoke with Jeff Martha and Medtronic Talks. They're really putting an emphasis on quality and really aligning their compensation packages to reward not having problems like this one. So it seems like they're still working through the system there.
Exactly. So we'll keep on following what's going on with this recall.
Hey everyone, before we get into this conversation with Russell Powers of DePuy Synthes, I want to remind you that our Device Talks Tuesday series resumes on Tuesday at 4 p.m. That's September 28th. Our friends at Avanya will be leading a very interesting and essential conversation about reimbursement. The title is How Reimbursement and Medical Writing Can Get Your Device to Market. I'll interview 2 leaders, 2 experts in the space. Jennifer Varela, she's a senior manager of reimbursement at Avanya, and Feta de Colonna, she is the manager of medical writing at Avanya. So we've got a really informative conversation laid out. So if you are a startup looking to find payment for your device, looking to get your device on the market, you're going to want to understand reimbursement. So join us on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Go to DeviceTalks.com for more information or to register, or you can scan the QR code, which is on the front of this podcast logo. Now, let's hear from Russell Powers, Worldwide President, Shoulder Reconstruction, Sports Medicine, and Spine at DePuy Synthes. Well, Russell Powers, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Great to have you. Let's get into your background a bit. I always enjoy understanding how folks find their way into the medtech industry. The first job I'm seeing for you in medtech was at Smith & Nephew. Was that the first, and how did you find your way there?
Yeah, so I started in the orthopedic industry in the early 90s. And so, heck, that's going on 30 years now. And you're right. I started right out of college, actually, with a company at that name was actually Richards Medical, became Smith & Nephew Richards, and now we know Richards as Smith & Nephew Orthopedics. And I don't know, Tom, how much do you know about the orthopedic industry? Are you pretty familiar with the industry?
Yeah, I've been covering for a little bit. I've never sold or implanted a device, but I certainly have talked to people who have done that and sold those.
Yeah, so our industry is a very large industry in terms of dollars. It's about $50 billion in size, and it's growing around 4%. But when you think about the community, it's actually pretty small, and it has a very interesting background. And so DePuy, which is now the orthopedic division of Johnson & Johnson, was founded, I believe the year was around 1895 by Rivard DePuy. He was a pharmaceutical salesman, and he founded the first orthopedic company in a small town in Indiana, Warsaw, Indiana. And then in the early 1900s, around 1920, I believe it was like 1927, one of his sales reps, Justin Zimmer, founded the second orthopedic company, which we know now as Zimmer, which is now Zimmer Biomet. And around that same time, in 1930, another DePuy sales rep founded a company in Memphis, Tennessee, which was his name was J. Don Richards, and that's Richards Medical, which is again now Smith & Nephew. And by dumb luck, I was walking past the business office at the University of Memphis in 1989, and I pulled a phone number off the cork board outside the business office about an internship at a medical device company known as Richards. And here I am 30 years later working for DePuy Synthes, the largest orthopedic company in the world.
That's all right. Yeah, I should have scrolled down a little more in your profile, and I would have seen the University of Memphis, and that would have certainly indicated where it all started from. So that's great. So what is it that you enjoy about orthopedics? Because as you said, you spent your time, most of your time, if not all your time, in orthopedics and or spine, if you want to. Some people like to combine the two, some people don't.
Yeah, so orthopedic and spine. I've spent a very large part of my career actually in spine, and I tell you, it's really about the personal relationships, both with our surgeon customers, but also with the industry. If you look back across my career, so I spent 7 years at Smith & Nephew, primarily in global marketing. And in 1997, Pat Miles, who was a colleague of mine at Smith & Nephew, he's now the CEO of AlphaTech, said, hey, you should come check out the spine company. Also in Memphis, Sophomore Danik, which is now Medtronic Spine, which is the largest spine company in the world. And I literally just went across the street to Medtronic and spent 13 years with Medtronic and marketing U.S. sales, spent some time with our international division. And that's really where I cut my teeth as an executive. And it's also where I met Aldo Dente, our company group chairman here at DePuy Synthes. And so if I fast forward a bit into my career, so Pat had left Medtronic and moved out to San Diego to start a spine company with Alex Lukianov, a company by the name of Nuvasive. I don't know if you've
sure
know Nuvasive. So I spent 6 years working with Keith and Pat and Alex out in San Diego. Was an officer of the company and had the opportunity to run the spine division, set up the international division, and I'm coming to the point of the story here. And so in 2015, when Alex stepped down as CEO, most of the leadership team left within a year, and I made the decision to leave at the end of 2015 to get into the startup world and join a small French startup. And the CEO at that time was Vincent Gardez, another colleague from the Medtronic days. And we successfully sold that company to Stryker in 2018. And that's when I got the call from Aldo to see if I had an interest in joining Johnson & Johnson. And, the common thread there is friendships, relationships, and colleagues. And my entire career has been built upon relationships. So I think that's what I most enjoy about orthopedics. And in fact, when we'll be in San Diego next week, we'll spend as much time almost like a high school reunion, seeing old friends and colleagues, as well as, your surgeon customers. So it's just a lot of fun, and it's a family industry, and I really enjoy it. And I couldn't think of another place I'd rather be and wake up and go to work every day other than orthopedics and spine. That's
terrific. Before we get into what you're doing currently, compare and contrast, if you would, your experiences at startups like NuVasive and Vexim and the larger companies in terms of their ability to innovate. Of course, NuVasive was a fast mover. They adopted the cheetah as sort of their spirit animal, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. How did you enjoy the two experiences? How different were they? And maybe what are the strengths of one and the other?
Yeah. So, I've been so lucky to have had the opportunity to work with large companies like Medtronic and Johnson & Johnson, and mid-sized companies like NuVasive and Smith & Nephew, and most recently with startups. And I think what I have found, and I share this with the teams at Johnson & Johnson and DePuy Synthes all the time, is that you cannot hide behind strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very easy to do at big companies. You can have an inspiring vision. That everyone's aligned to. You can have a strategy that people believe in, and you can have a plan that the company has invested in. And these are all so important. But if you do not execute, then the vision, the strategy, and the plan, they're really for naught. And you have to have a solid strategy, but you must absolutely be able to execute on that strategy. And I think oftentimes big companies are great at the McKinsey style PowerPoints, but sometimes they lack the execution piece of that. And so I think that's, from the big company experience. But I think secondly, what I really learned at that sort of that mid-size in the startup world is, regardless of the segment, whether it's hip, knee, spine, sports, trauma, regardless of the size of the company, the three, and I was taught this by one of my mentors, that game-changing innovation, outstanding customer support, and the best sales force, and the best people. Those are the three requirements of success to any parts of orthopedics. And our business is still in the operating room. It is not in the boardroom. It's the operating room. And you have to spend time in the field with the sales force and with your surgeon customers. You cannot run a business from a boardroom. So I think those would be, lessons learned across my experiences. And then the last thing would be, you got to be, authentic and true to yourself. The most important thing is, really is a company's culture, and ensuring that your core values align with the values and the core values of the company that you're working for.
Sure. Just before, again, I'm sorry, you've raised an interesting point I want to follow up on. The access to the surgery, the ORs. We saw during the pandemic the rise of companies like Avail and Proximie and Explorer, who were all trying to create digital connections for sales reps to surgeons. Orthopedics is different. It seems as if the sales reps need to be in there. But did DePuy and J&J, did you handle that relationship any differently? Are you putting fewer sales reps in the OR? Is it consistent as it was before? How has that changed, if it has changed at all?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed at all. We took a close look at a lot of these remote virtual opportunities to be in the operating room, and but at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that we have to be in the OR, and so we'll Will there be a hybrid approach going forward? Yeah, I think so, maybe, especially when it comes to training. But in terms of the patient on the table and being a part of that surgical support team and that surgical team, it's you cannot replace that in a virtual environment.
All right, let's get into your work at DePuy. You're the worldwide president of spine and sports medicine and shoulder reconstruction. Tell us where those businesses fit into the larger orthopedics business at J&J.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So let's start with sports and shoulders. So when you look at our sports and shoulders business, it's actually a pretty significant and strategically important business to DePuy Synthes. When you combine the two, sports medicine and shoulder reconstruction, it's actually the second largest market in orthopedics, but it's the fastest growing market in orthopedics. And so from a strategic standpoint, just the opportunity that it presents us is of great significance. And we also feel that this platform serves as the gateway to the ambulatory surgery center. As we see more and more orthopedic procedures shifting from that inpatient setting to the outpatient setting, this is where these sports procedures are performed every day. So that's where our sales force, they wake up and they go to the ambulatory surgery center. And then from a foundational standpoint, our capital equipment portfolio with our arthroscopic equipment systems really serve as a foundation to what we believe will be the OR of the future, or the ability to connect data digitally from an OR perspective. So our sports and shoulders business is extremely important to DePuy Synthes, and we've taken the opportunity to put our shoulder reconstruction business with sports based upon how our customer approach things. So when you think about a rotator cuff injury, our shoulder surgeons and sports surgeons really look at pathology, and they look for example, how would you treat a rotator cuff tear? And that injury can be treated with soft tissue repair with like sutures and anchors, or if it's irreparable, it may be treated with a reverse shoulder arthroplasty procedure. And so that's the way we look at the business. That's how we approach the market. So we've decided to put our shoulder business with our sports business, and we've created a business unit or a platform that we refer to as sports and shoulders. And I came on board in the early 2019 to lead that segment of our business.
As I mentioned at the top, the shoulder area is you mentioned it's one of the faster growing spaces. I kind of called it the final frontier of orthopedics. What is so special about the shoulder, and why is it growing so quickly? Is this due to the rise of new technologies or just new surgical approaches?
Yeah, the shoulder recon market it's actually been around for quite some time. If you look back to the origins of shoulder prosthesis, it really dates back more than 100 years, but it really wasn't until the 1950s through the 70s with the development of the anatomic shoulder by Neer, and then in the mid 80s with the Vermont reverse shoulder, did the market as we know it today really form. And so it is a relatively young market compared to other areas of orthopedics, and the size of the market from a patient standpoint is relatively small compared to hips and knees, but it's about $1.5 billion in size, but it's growing at high single digits. And there's actually a lot of markets within the market. You have your anatomic shoulder, you have the reverse shoulder, you have fracture, and you have revisions. And I would say the real growth drivers there, Tom, are in the reverse market and also what we refer to as the short stem and the stemless market. So it is a young market. It's a fast growing market, and technology is really, I think, advancing and a growth driver within the market and driving the market to these growth rates.
So tell us a bit about the Inhance Shoulder system. This is a new system that you released recently, that you announced recently, and kind of got this conversation going.
Yeah, so we just announced the release of our newest shoulder system, the Inhance Shoulder system, and we'll actually be officially launching the system next week at the AAOS meeting. And so this new system is really important, not only to our business, but it's important to the patients that we treat as well. And but if you step back just a bit and think about the importance to our business. So 10 years ago, DePuy Synthes had a number one market share position in shoulder reconstruction. But due to a few strategic miscues, we took our eye off the ball, and we've actually slipped now to a number three market share position. And I will tell you, we're absolutely committed to returning to number one. And when I first came on board about 2.5 years ago and took over the shoulder business, we established a 3-step process to return to number one. And the first step was that we had to complete our current portfolio. The second step was that we knew we needed to compete in a more significant way with the next generation shoulder system. And the third part of the plan was really leaping the competition with what we refer to as a digitally enabled shoulder. And so we actually completed the first phase with the launch of 5 new products over the last 12 months. And we're now entering the second phase of the plan, and that's with the introduction of our next generation shoulder system, Inhance. And so from a business standpoint, the Inhance is extremely important to our business because it's the second phase of our plan, and we're super excited about releasing it next week at the AAOS meeting. From a patient standpoint, when you think about the importance, and from a surgeon standpoint, I refer to Inhance as a next generation system. And what I mean by that is that it really offers a new class of convertibility. And what it does, Tommy, it allows surgeons for the first time the ability to really seamlessly transition between a stemless or short stem or a standard stem implant choice during a single surgical procedure. And so you have multiple options in terms of choices on implants, but more importantly, the system uses a streamlined instrument set and technique that really allows for greater OR efficiency. And we've coined the term one-step prep. So we use a one-step prep stemless surgical approach for all Inhance products, which basically means the surgeon will go in and prepare the anatomy, and he can make the implant choice during the operation. He doesn't have to plan ahead of time for which implant he's going to use. And this really allows for a reduced number of instruments and steps to really any other system on the market today.
How interesting. Thanks for that description of that. How does reclaiming number one, how does that happen? Are you looking to, is this a matter of growing the business, of getting new customers? Obviously, there's going to be an element of this, getting new customers, but is it primarily building the shoulder business, or are you looking at converting business as well? How is it the comeback strategy sort of weighted?
Yeah, I think it's both.
Yeah.
When you look at the market, the 1.5 billion, a billion of that's in the U.S. So this is really a U.S. game. Even though this is a global business, we have to win in the U.S. to get back to number one. And number one is now Stryker with the acquisition of Wright, with Zimmer Biomet right on their heels, and then we have that number three position. And so really, it's there's two parts of the equation. One is winning with the shoulder specialist, with the fellowship trained shoulder surgeon that is doing rotator, soft tissue repair and shoulder recon business, but it's also winning with the general orthopedic surgeon that's doing a hip, a knee, and shoulders. And so there's really two different market segments and customer profiles that we'll go after. And so our plan is to win in both of those segments here in the U.S.
And I understand one of the benefits of the Inhance is that it will be more attractive, or it's designed for more outpatient and ASC settings. Are those becoming an important area where these procedures are done?
Yeah, it's we're seeing more and more procedures move into that outpatient setting, into the ambulatory surgery center. And we're really seeing this shift with our hip and knee procedures. And the Inhance system was actually designed with that shift the site of care in mind. And I don't know if you've been to an orthopedic procedure, or you've seen these.
I haven't.
You've seen these loaner kits. I mean, you can have up to 5, 6, 7 surgical trays required for one particular surgery, and the cost to serve that model is very expensive within orthopedics. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in CapEx will be invested into these surgical kits. And so what we've done with Inhance, by reducing the number of steps, which reduces the number of instruments required, we've now eliminated a large need for CapEx or instrumentation. So now we only have two sets required to do a surgical procedure. So what that means for an ambulatory surgery center is it lowers the cost of the surgery, saving the healthcare system money. It streamlines the instrumentation, which allows for easier access in and out of the ambulatory surgery center. And then with the convertibility, you don't have to have multiple implants and multiple instrument sets in your inventory, because you can do all of these different procedures with this one instrument kit. So it was really designed with the ASC in mind, and we think that we can help drive the patients from that outpatient or inpatient setting to the outpatient setting with this streamlined instrument kit.
How are you looking going forward with new product releases? Do you have a whole string of I don't know if you're announcing anything else, or again, at this point, if you had announced anything else at AAOS, or do you have plans for the next year or the year after that? What does your pipeline look like of new products for the shoulder and I guess the larger, the sports surgery space?
Yeah, look, so specifically to Inhance, we have a series of introductions over the next 5 years. We just received 510K clearance on our Inhance short stem and stemless system, and that's what we will be reducing at the AAOS next week. And then over the next 5 years, we will be rolling out the reverse shoulder, which actually will come out a little bit later this year. We'll have our stemless reverse, which will actually require a clinical trial. So the stemless reverse, will start that clinical trial very soon, and we'll be releasing it upon FDA approval. And then we'll also have our fracture and revision system. So we have a very nice cadence in the within the Inhance system over the next 5 years. In addition to continuing to innovate with our global system, where we actually just submitted our 510K clearance for our global Icon system, which we ran a European clinical trial, and we just put it in the mail last Friday to the FDA. So we're super excited about the potential clearance of that device later this year. And then we have some other things that we're working on in the digital space. So we've got a lot coming in that in the shoulder recon space over the next 1 to 5 years.
We're seeing, of course, surgical robots moving in pretty much everywhere else, already in knee and hip and spine and elsewhere. Is there an opportunity, or is it for robotics in the shoulder? Is that something we'll see?
Yeah, I think there is, and as you indicated, it's they're widely used in spine and knee procedures today. But when I think about the robot, is really more than a robot. We look at this, space as the digital space, and when you think about the journey of the patient, and it's really what we envision to be a digital journey. And we actually formed a new business unit that we refer to as our VELYS digital surgery unit. Mm-hmm. And through VELYS, we'll be able to walk with the patient from the time he or she first visits the surgeon, through preoperative planning, during the surgical procedure, from a postoperative follow-up standpoint, through physical therapy, all connected together with patient apps, surgical planning software, enabling technologies like a robot, and databases that will help us develop algorithms to better predict the future outcomes. And so, I think it's more than robots. It's augmented reality, mixed reality, it's artificial intelligence, it's navigations, it's patient apps, and it's really a truly exciting time for orthopedics when it comes to digital surgery.
Very cool. And my final question, I just want to ask about the spine space. What's going on at DePuy in that area? Are you introducing any new products? I don't know if you'll be at NASS in Boston, which is coming up.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Spine is it's a passion of mine, and I'm super excited to be back in the spine business. And we are the number 2 spine company in the world, and we've been innovating in this space for a long time, and we've got a lot of exciting things coming with spine. And what I would tell you from a spine standpoint, we're really focused on 3 areas in spine, and it's providing comprehensive solutions to the most complex spine pathologies. That's our number 1 innovation objective. Number 2 is making spine surgery simple and less invasive, and then number 3, it's being able to provide predictable, reproducible, and optimal surgical outcomes. And that's really enabled by that digital surgery space that we just discussed. And what I would tell you is NASS is in our backyard this year, and we plan to show up in a big way and own the meeting. So we're super excited about the North American Spine Society being here in Boston, and can't wait to put our best foot forward at that meeting.
That's great. Boston is my hometown too. So I'm glad you guys are gonna own the room. So Russell, it was great to talk to you. I'm grateful for the time, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Tom. Really enjoyed it.
All right, Chris Newmarker, let's roll into number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers.
Well, this was interesting. I mean, Vicarious Surgical, they did a SPAC deal. This was the week they went public. They went public on Monday. Monday happened to be one of the worst market days for the market in months. With worries about it looks like like there's questions of how much our banks are investing in Chinese real estate. So hopefully not too much. But meanwhile, even as the markets went way down, Vicarious, their RBOT stock on the New York Stock Exchange still ticked up a bit on their first day out there out of the gate on Monday, and then the next day it went up. I was checking it during the middle of the day on Tuesday, and it was up 19%. So not shabby at all. Like nice increase, and it settled down a bit, but yeah, nice first week for Vicarious Surgical as a public company.
Yeah, and they're another Boston-based tech company. We've had a few around here, non-medtech related. We had Toast, the restaurant transaction company. I think their IPO created turned their co-founders into billionaires, I believe. So big news there, of course. And then Ginkgo Bioworks, another local Boston company that went public. So Vicarious, not as large as those, but continues to really bolster the Massachusetts tech scene. It's
such an interesting space area. I mean, Intuitive really has dominated it so much, over the years. But now we've got these big players like Medtronic and J&J getting in there. In fact, our new MDO editor Jim Hammerand had a quick story saying Medtronic was about a week ago saying they were waiting for the phone call to get European approval for Hugo. So we'll see. By the time this runs, maybe they got the phone call. We'll see. Well,
they'll certainly make next week's top 5 if that happens. So. All right, Well, bring us to number 2, Chris Newmarker.
Well, number 2 is the ongoing Theranos trial. So without ado, here is Danielle Kirsh to tell us. Danielle, what's you've been, following the trial, following all the news reports, writing some, nice roundups of what's going on, almost on a daily basis. I mean, so what was the biggest thing that stuck out to you in recent days?
Well, since the last time I was here, there's been 3 more days of the trial. And I think the most popular story this week was the scientist from last week who testified about blood tests inaccuracies prior to the deal that the company made, and said that Holmes allegedly pressured her to validate blood tests, speed out the rollout of the device. So that was one thing. And then, there was 2 other days where the prosecution seemed to be shifting blame. The defense was shifting blame to Sonny one day.
Sonny Balwani, the former Theranos president, because what, like, the defense seems to be like moving toward this argument that Balwani manipulated Holmes into doing these things. Yeah.
Yesterday is when former defense chief James Mattis testified. And he basically said that even though Elizabeth Holmes told investors that the Edison device was being deployed in Afghanistan, Mattis said it wasn't. So
was not. Wow. So she, it sounds a lot like the prosecution kind of just building this case, like the defense is trying to say that, she was influenced by Balwani, but you keep on seeing more and more of this testimony saying that Elizabeth Holmes did this. This.
Yeah, every day it kind of changes in my mind. One day I'm like, oh, this kind of bodes well for Elizabeth Holmes, and the next day it's like, never mind.
I wonder, has the defense produced any sort of documentation or email or text or any sort of anything that suggests some sort of coercion or manipulation between Sunny Balwani and Elizabeth Holmes was happening?
Not yet. There hasn't been any texts that have come up, but I did get a little bit of access to some of their texts through some of the court documents that have been filed. And I haven't personally seen any of those, but I guess we'll wait and see what the defense plans to bring up later on in the trial. We're still very early into it. It's supposed to go on until mid-December. So it'll be, it'll be a while.
And the defense has said Holmes could testify, right?
They said she could testify to the allegations that Sunny Balwani was emotionally manipulative.
Wow.
Of her as her former romantic partner and former Theranos president.
That's going to be, if she actually does testify, that'll be a huge moment in that trial, I suspect. I mean, when those types of things happen, I mean, it's really, they're hearing these arguments that she was manipulated. You'll have her up there on the stand, and the jury will really get to decide for themselves, like listening to her testify what they think happened. So that'll be huge if it happened.
All right, Daniel. Well, I didn't realize it was going to go on for that long, so maybe we'll have you on every week of the trial, or maybe we'll give you a few weeks off here and there if there's a slow week. Haven't really seen a slow week yet, but well, thanks for the update. Of course. And let's roll into number one, Chris Newmarker.
Well, at number one on the list, this is another story from Jim Hammerdown on MDO.
Yeah. This is a scary one, actually.
Yeah, this is very scary. We're increasingly seeing, the medical device companies saying that they're, seeing U.S. hospital procedures affected by Delta. That's unfortunately not a surprise, but the thing that Jim dug into here, with all these things we're hearing from the big companies is that, they're also, saying that we're not going to bounce. They aren't expecting us to bounce out quickly out of this. That they're hearing a lot from their health provider customers about hospital worker burnout. It's just it's tough being in crowded hospitals where you're seeing a lot of people dying, and it's going to take a while for these health providers it could take a while for them to bounce back after this. So that's kind of like a dynamic that I think the medical device industry will have to work with for now.
I think even suggesting that they have something to bounce back from suggests we're not going to have continued wave after wave. And I'm not sure where we are with that regard. We'll have to learn to live with it more. But I think if we're going to talk about infrastructure in this country, we need to talk about healthcare infrastructure. We need to have more facilities, and we need to reward these people and keep them in their jobs, or we're going to be in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the system's been running out. We can't run at a crisis level with our healthcare system forever. We need to, come up with some solutions and put some investments in where we need to, and make sure that we want to have a functioning healthcare system, that can help all of us. And, we shouldn't have the people who are, working in it getting burnt out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good stuff by Jim. He's kicking butt.
It's going great.
Awesome. Well, one potential solution for this burnout, or at least one of the reasons OssoVR came together, was to create a virtual reality training world for surgeons, so they could become familiar with new procedures without having to travel and without having to meet in places. So I actually had the opportunity to interview CEO Dr. Justin Barad in the OssoVR surgical suite. So
That's
we did
awesome.
it, I think, my first virtual reality podcast interview.
Nice.
Which we'll play now. We'll play about, I interviewed him for 45 minutes. I literally lost track of time. It's like being in a casino where you're just having so much fun and you're done talking and you've been there for 45 minutes. I edited out the part where he was demonstrating the virtual reality tools and procedures, just because despite my efforts to describe what was going on, it just didn't really relate well to a podcast. But we did break that off into a video segment, which we'll send out through social media channels. So if you want to watch me
exciting.
Interview Justin in a virtual reality setting, we'll both be wearing our masks, so it's a completely safe interaction. So the whole get up is we'll be wearing our smocks and masks and gloves, but it's super cool.
Yeah.
And it is, I'm sure most people or many people by now have done some sort of virtual reality connection. It is, it's extraordinary how it kind of tricks the mind into thinking you're in that room with that person.
Really wild.
It felt very much like a personal connection, and like we were talking on some conference expo floor or something. So it was totally cool. So I hope folks enjoy this interview with Justin Barad, the founder and CEO of OssoVR. All right, before we begin the conversation with Justin Barad, I just want to let folks know that the audio was recorded over the Oculus VR headsets that Osso provided. The sound in the room was excellent. I could hear Justin very clearly. The recording doesn't quite reflect that quality, at least for me. Justin's audio sounded fine, which is why I'm really using this, because he's the one you want to hear from. I did the best I could with my audio, but it was crystal clear in the room. But the recording isn't quite up to the standards we have in the podcast. So apologies if it sounds a little muffled, but again, it does not reflect my experience in the OssoVR OR. All right, now let's hear from Justin Barad.
So welcome to the podcast, Justin Barad.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This is an unusual setting for this. I want to get into your life story. Of course, we've covered it once before in a previous podcast, and I was actually just listening to one you did last year on MedTech Talk. So it's a great story, and I want to talk about it a bit. But I kind of want to understand, what do you see when you stand in this room? We're standing in the Osso VR operating room. It reminds me a bit of the bridge of the Enterprise. I doubt a lot of these places are as nice as this. You've got a beautiful view of Miami, I believe it was. Yeah. And a large turbo lift elevator door behind us. But when you stand here, what do you see the potential of? What can this be, or what is it, and what can it be?
Yeah, well, I think, right now we are in a virtual operating room, and we're in different states, but it feels like we're here in the same room together. Much more so even if we were talking together through a Zoom meeting. So that's one thing. It feels like I'm here with a person.
It's definitely tingling a different part of my head. Like I feel like I'm underdressed with my T-shirt, my Letters to Cleo T-shirt, which...
I think you look great. But yeah, that's the first thing that strikes me, is that I'm here with a person hanging out. The second thing is that I'm in a space that feels very comfortable. It's spacious, but not kind of endless, which kind of creates a sense of comfort. And it is both kind of, I would say, cool, realistic, and comforting, in that, it's kind of modern but slightly futuristic. Mm-hmm. It is filled with soft edges, kind of comfortable, warm lighting. So it's a space that I would be happy to spend a lot of time in. I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't need to leave. I don't feel claustrophobic. It's kind of fun and interesting, and I want to stay here for a while. And then it's also, if someone were watching a video of us talking to each other, they would want to jump in here. This looks kind of exciting and interesting and inspiring to them. So that's kind of how we try and create our spaces and our experiences, is both, you want it to be realistic and educational, but you also want to draw people in and then have them want to stay in this world so that, they get as much educational value as possible out of it.
That's great. And it's a fairly large space. I'm guessing maybe 20 by 30-ish. I'm obviously virtually eyeballing it, but is this intended for how many people do you quote unquote fit into this space?
Yeah, it's pretty flexible. You can be in here by yourself. You can have a one-on-one like we're having, or, you can have 12 or so people with different stations set up like you see here, and you can kind of rotate around. You can have side conversations, and it really feels like a normal educational environment. Typically when we're training in sort of like a lab or kind of an OR-like setting, it's usually a bigger space because you need a lot more people to really run those things. So usually there are a lot of people standing around, multiple surgeons, and so we can really recreate that experience here in virtual reality, and you do it in the comfort of your own home or office.
Absolutely. And we are currently taking a space up on the floor, and I'm staring at you, and you're wearing blue surgical gloves, a blue half smock. I see the mask, the goggles, and the hat, and that's how we kind of look like extras in the Invisible Man movie or something like that, or maybe body doubles. Is this a familiar feeling? When you went into designing this space, did you know what physicians might find comfortable and appealing? I mean, obviously we don't need to be wearing surgical garb, but it is a familiar look for them, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, once again, it's that balance between kind of the kind of realism of the experience. It's like if you are in an operating room or even in a training lab, you're going to be wearing scrubs. So it's important to be wearing scrubs. You should be wearing gloves, for multiple reasons. And also, you want it to feel kind of cool. I think the design is really cutting edge and comfortable. So just like little things like, having the glasses there, just, you can see people's eyes, but you avoid some of the issues of having simulated eyes in VR. You run into, it's very easy for things to look creepy, and which you really want to get away from, which is a unique problem with VR. So, we're able to do certain things to make it feel realistic, but also kind of usable and fun, comfortable.
Very true. And I see, I'll explain, your name is about 3 inches above your head virtually, of course, and when you talk, and I'm sure when I'm talking,
I wish this existed in real life. Very bad.
Extraordinarily helpful for me these days. So you started OssoVR in 2016. Is this what you thought you'd have 5 years later? Has the vision played out to where you thought it would be?
I think, in my wildest dreams, I hoped it would probably not even be this far along as it is. So it's exceeded my expectations. The speed at which we have grown in terms of the size of the team, the amount of procedures that we have, the quality of the product, it's completely blown my mind. And, who could have predicted, recent events of the past couple of years, but certainly that was a major factor and a big tailwind. So, here we are today, and I'm really humbled to be alongside this ride as we really, not necessarily change the world, but improve it. It's what we have in healthcare today is amazing. The healthcare professionals we have, the procedures we have, nothing short of miraculous. But in words of Atul Gawande, better is possible. And we're starting to see that impact. And I think that's probably one of the things that's the most exciting for me as we get real clinical data showing that this makes the amazing procedures and professionals we have even better than they already are by a significant amount.
Well, let's talk about that a bit. And there are some people who may, I think those days are done, but earlier on, they probably rolled their eyes at the idea of this thing being necessary. What am I going to learn doing this? But in listening to the interview you did recently, it's kind of left me, when you kind of stipulated the problems that you're facing, left me just asking, what else is there? There are no other solutions other than the current situation. So what are the problems that OssoVR seeks to solve?
Well, I think right now there are kind of like 4 key challenges that we have when it comes to the delivery of procedures and surgery in healthcare. The first is there's simply too much to learn. So if you think about it, accelerating science and technology is expanding the library of procedures that healthcare professionals are expected to know how to do on demand. I think of it like we're going from, say like French Laundry to Cheesecake Factory, right? It's just, you can't do everything well, as much as I love Cheesecake Factory. And so I always tell, there are a lot of stories. I'm sure every healthcare professionals have, like, one day I was called to operate on a gorilla, or, sometimes you're at a computer, like Googling what to do, because they're procedures maybe you've never done before, only do very rarely. And that's just because there are so many now with the introduction of these new technologies and new techniques. So we don't have a good way to learn things on demand or refresh older procedures. The second part of the problem is modern surgery and modern procedures, everything everyone's so excited about for good reason, like robotics, minimally invasive surgery, navigation, and other enabling technologies, are actually much more complicated, and they're much harder to learn. And so the learning curve for a robotic surgery is often 10 times longer than its traditional counterpart, or nearly so. And we don't really have a new way to sort of accommodate this increased complexity. The third part of the problem is that we lack a way to assess technical ability in healthcare. And so, I always tell a story. In my whole career, the only time I've been objectively assessed, I was asked to play the board game Operation and, remove the plastic pieces without buzzing, which I did, and I'm very proud of. But, and once again, it's not that we don't want to assess these things. We just don't really have a way to. Right. So we're flying a little bit blind in a way. And then, the fourth dynamic is, of course, the global pandemic. The main way that we stay up to date and learn about new procedures is getting together in person. At large-scale conferences, like just a couple of weeks ago, we were at the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons Conference, and there were very few people there. The attendance was quite minimal, and it was canceled the year before. Or at large-scale courses where, you get together with 20, 100 other surgeons, and you're at cadaver stations doing these surgeries, but the attendance is also going down significantly for those as well. So, how do we continue to maintain our skills and learn about new procedures? And so those are really the key dynamics at play today that are really causing some major issues when it comes to the delivery of newer and what are often higher value procedures for patients.
So what does OssoVR provide? Now I'm looking at a tray table with a skull on it, which I don't think is usually typically on a tray table. But also
it's a bonus for you.
And I'm picking it up right now, but there's a display of drivers and tools that are used. We're also looking at a patient's bed with someone who clearly needs a knee operation. You can describe all this better, but what does this training do? I mean, as you've noted in the past, this is obviously not a replacement for in-person training. Is this a warm-up? Is this just an introductory level thing? What is OssoVR's virtual reality system provide?
That's a really good question. So what we're doing right now is we are both in physically separate locations. All we have are Oculus Quest 2 headsets and 2 controllers in our hands. And now we are in a room together. We have a Mayo stand with all of the instrumentation to do a procedure. In this case, this is an orthopedic procedure for a tibial shaft fracture. So this is a titanium rod that you put in the leg to fix the fracture. We have a patient, a surgical table, fully functional C-arm, fluoroscopy, and also some anatomical models for additional education. Now, if you were to train in real life, just imagine what it would take to get all of this stuff together. You would need the facility to rent out. You need people to maintain the facility. You need a Mayo stand. You need the instruments. We need each other and our time. You need a cadaver or a physical model. You need a surgical table. You need a C-arm. We need to be wearing lead and all of the additional stuff. So, if you think about it, the logistical and cost lift of these training experiences are extremely high. And these things are very hard to do. Now, once again, in some cases, we are actually replacing in-person training, but I would say that's the exception, not the rule. The idea is that if a learning curve for a procedure, let's say, is 100 cases, so you have to do it 100 times, spending all of that time and money to do a procedure once, when maybe you're going to be doing it a few months from now, is not really a good investment of anyone's time or money, because you're going to be so early on the learning curve. By a week, you're going to forget 90% of what you learned. So the idea is that we're repositioning in-person training to make it much more effective and efficient for everyone's time and money. So the idea is that you can use OssoVR repeatedly over a period of time, maybe a couple of weeks, and you can train multiple times. You can test yourself, making sure that you're meeting proficiency requirements. You can meet with experts. For example, you could join me and I could give you some tips and tricks you wouldn't even get from the experience. Be like, oh, hold this here. Like when you're using this, make sure you apply extra pressure. Do not hammer here. This will bend. Little things like that, just additional polish. I could see how you're doing ergonomically, your economy of motion, things like that. And then when you've done all of that and you were trained up, then you come to the in-person component. And what you're doing is you're changing kind of the dynamic. You're taking this very precious in-person training experience from an introductory experience to what I call last mile training or a refinement experience. It's a master class. Because, when you're doing all of that, you want to make sure that this is just the cherry on top. So this is where you're getting all the little bits and feels and final, you're like, oh yeah, this is how that works, or this is that thing. And you're putting your skills to the test. You already know exactly what to do. So that's the key message. Everybody immediately goes, they're like, well, will this replace in-person training? I'm a surgeon first. And, nothing will replace operating on an actual patient, like not even a cadaver. It has so many drawbacks compared to actual surgery. Like it doesn't have the pathology. It feels different. Even cadavers have a lot of challenges. But the idea is that, just doing a procedure on a cadaver, for example, which is very expensive, very time consuming, one time when there's a learning curve of 100 cases and there's often no assessment at all, and then a few months later just going to operate on a patient is not as effective as really preparing yourself as much as possible, assessing yourself, getting that hands-on experience for polish, and then you also have a refresh tool if you need it. And the one final thing is surgery is a team sport. Sometimes there'll be 8 people in the room, all doing different things and coordinating, especially with these newer technologies like robotics. Everyone has very important roles, much more so than surgery of the past, where the surgeon could just ask for things, right? Everyone needs to know what to do. But there's not enough money to train the whole surgical team because we have a lot of people rotating in and out. Maybe in a month, I'd work with 25 different surgical techs. So now we have a great tool where this is so easy to pick up and go. We can quickly in-service and get people up to speed as they rotate onto the team. So those are all the components of how this really elevates our existing surgical training system. And once again, the people jump immediately to well, will this replace what I'm currently doing? And that is certainly not the intention. It is to make it much more effective in just repositioning what we're doing so that patients see better results.
Excellent. Well, let's explore your background for a second, and maybe we can do a quick couple of steps in the procedure and just sort of let people hear what happens and see on the video if they're watching the video. Yeah. But take me back to your background again. I know you're a coder and a gamer sort of to start. I don't think medicine was an early part of your plan. Talk me through the first stage of your career and how did it lead to med school?
Yeah, so I started out in life, like you say, very into video games, and I was really into how they were made, and I wanted to make them myself. So, taught myself how to code, been programming since middle school. The opportunity to work at Activision, I have a game credit with them for a Quake Engine game, which is kind of ancient at this point. And then, what got me interested in healthcare is that, like a lot of people, I had a family member become ill. And I had this idea one day. I'm like, well, hey, I'm really into software and technology. I'm very passionate about it. Is there a way to use that to help people instead of just for entertainment? And so that led me to change my major from computer science to biomedical engineering, which I studied at UC Berkeley. Go Bears. And I had this strong kind of vision in my head that I wanted to invent healthcare technology. But as I was nearing the end of college, I really had no idea how to get started with invention and innovation. So I was kind of asking around. I asked one of my mentors for advice, and he told me, if you want to invent something, you need to understand the problem you're trying to solve first. And he thought that a great way to understand medical problems was to be a doctor. So in retrospect, I may not have exactly known what I was signing up for, but I took his advice very literally.
And did you go into med school and did you have an idea that you would do this and then go back to inventing, or did you, at some point, you're still practicing, at some point did you sort of understand the joys of being a physician and you want that to be part of your life? Do you want that to be part of your life going forward?
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the most frequent questions I get in terms of people going through their own journeys in terms of how to be involved in technology and innovation. And I think it is a very stressful dilemma that all kind of innovative healthcare professionals and clinicians have. So, I went to med school at UCLA. I stayed there to do my orthopedic surgery training. It was really there that I experienced this problem firsthand, and also got involved in VR because of my gaming background. I'm like, wow, this is an incredible solution for this problem. And, I think initially, quite honestly, I'm like, okay, I'll, spin up a prototype and then I'll find a CEO on Craigslist and he can kind of take it and turn it into a big thing. And, what you realize is one, that I cared about solving this problem more than almost anything else in my life. And I never experienced anything like that before. I was so excited about it and wanted to work on it every single day, to the point where even if I was faced with a choice whether to kind of stay at this program I was doing at Stanford or to go full-time with Osso, knowing full well that 99.7% of startups fail. And so I asked myself, well, what if this failed? And I still would have been happy knowing that I had attempted to solve what I think is one of the most pressing challenges we have in healthcare today. So that's kind of where my head was at. But, I quickly realized that especially those early days where you have to make things happen from nothing, that you have to have that kind of excitement and passion and obsession to keep things moving. And I don't think finding a CEO off of, Craigslist or LinkedIn would have had that same kind of effect. And I knew that if I didn't go all in on this, it just never was going to see the light of day. And so I took the plunge, and it was definitely terrifying, but I definitely did it.
So in those early days, you've talked about the background of the designers who obviously are very skilled and frankly artists in creating a situation like this, a room like this. At what point early on did you say, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this completely 100%, need to get the best of the best to work with me on this? And how do you sort of convince yourself that you can convince them to be part of something so new and so novel?
Well, I'm always amazed the kinds of people that we're able to attract and get to join us on our mission and this journey. And I think, part of it is that the story of what we're doing really resonates with people. And, people come to Osso and, they see what we're doing, they see the team and how exciting it is, but every single person that joins the company is like, I experienced something in healthcare, something happened to my family, and I want to help, and I want to use the skills I've developed over a lifetime to solve this problem. And so it really has happened quite organically and just sort of attracting the best of the best, and it creates a kind of a snowball effect of attracting even more talented people, and they're all very mission driven and wonderful too. This is the best team that I've ever worked on. No offense to prior teams, but it really is just amazing. I will say that we had really a major realization that early on I had a very sort of engineering and surgeon mindset to what we were doing, and all I thought was, hey, this just needs to work. We just need to be able to train surgeons. And honestly, it doesn't need to look that good, because the important thing is that we're training surgeons and making patients safe. But what I realized in some of the kinds of team members that we were bringing on, like, people from Industrial Light and Magic and, Apple and Microsoft, like these leading studios. And, what they showed me is that, a lot of people, they look at Osso like you've been commenting here, and they're like, this looks amazing. This feels amazing. This is beautiful. Even if you're like not in medicine and you're looking at this, you're like, wow, this is pretty impressive. Like it just, when you see it. And what I came to realize is that to get people to do something new, even if it's adding something, right? We're not removing anything. We're just kind of adding something to the process. That's behavior change. And we know that we're very slow moving in medicine, even under unprecedented conditions sometimes. And so in order to get people to try something new, we need to inspire them. We need to get them excited, and we need to kind of keep them engaged. And art has the power to do that. The beauty and artistry of OssoVR is partially what I credit our rapid expansion now in 30 countries, training over 3,000 healthcare professionals a month, because people see this and they're like, wow, I I need to try this, or I want to learn more. Like, what is going on here? Like, a lot like the questions you're asking. Like, I need to understand this. And if you actually look at medical history, this is how a lot of medical breakthroughs have actually come to be. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're all very big fans of Andreas Vesalius in like the 1700s, but long story short, there were 1,000 years of the medical dark ages because there was just one particular form of medical thought that no one could seem to sort of turn over. They were branded a heretic. But this one guy, instead of telling everyone they were wrong, he actually commissioned a work of art. It was a book of medical illustrations of anatomy. And it was so beautiful and so exciting and so different that everybody bought it. Everybody wanted it. It was highly desirable. What they didn't realize is it was completely revolutionary in terms of overturning the sort of paradigm of medical knowledge. Wow. But no one was thinking about that. They were just like, I want to buy what like was the 1700s version of an NFT. And then it completely changed the world. And that was all through the power of art. And so I really see this emphasis on the artists and the best of the best who are bringing the OssoVR and the beauty of the platform as kind of driving this, let's do something new, but let's also make it really exciting for everyone to bring them on board.
Wow, that's great. That's a great parallel, and that's a great point. I mean, I don't want to give these headsets up. I'm not going to mail them back to you. I'm going to hold on to them. I want to I want to visit this wonderland.
I know you're at it.
So cool. All right, I'll send them back. No, I'll use my son's Oculus. I'll be fine.
Okay, folks, quick timeout. So this is where Justin demonstrated the procedure. He worked with the patient, worked with the tools. It was very cool to watch. I did my best to describe what was going on, but upon listening to the audio, I just don't think it really does it justice. So OssoVR is taking the audio. They actually record these sessions. They have a little camera that floats up in the air and records everything that goes on. And they turn it into a video, and we will share that video on our social media channels. Now, let's get back into this conversation with Justin Barad of OssoVR.
So who are your primary customers? Who are you selling to now?
So we mainly work with the medical device industry, since all of these newer procedures involve some kind of device or enabling technology. And when we get trained, when I'm talking about, hey, I want to learn about how to do this newer surgery, new procedure, minimally invasive, I'm not doing that through my hospital. I'm doing that through a medical device company. So like Johnson & Johnson, Smith & Nephew, Stryker. And so those are our customers. We work with them. We bring their procedures into OssoVR, and then their customers utilize OssoVR as part of their educational journey.
And you mentioned that orthopedics is sort of a great place to start with this. What are your intentions going forward? Does this sort of technology, does this platform allow for simulation in other specialties of other surgeries, even soft tissue surgery?
Yeah, that's a great question. We view OssoVR as a universal simulation platform. Mm-hmm. And so we've already moved beyond orthopedics, although it's still a major focus for us. But, we are in spine, which some people consider that separate from orthopedics. We're in the cardiac space, doing things like electrophysiology, structural heart. We're in the interventional or endovascular space, doing things like aortic valve, abdominal aortic repair, as an example. We are plastic surgery. We're in the gastroenterology, urology space. So we're really moving beyond just orthopedics. And the vision that I have is that there are, you can look at different estimates, but maybe like 20 to 30 million healthcare professionals who are doing procedures with patients. And that can be anything, in my eyes, from putting in an IV or a central line or doing complex robotic surgery. And just in the ease of how you and I are jumping into VR together, I want every single one of them to be able to jump into OssoVR to train and assess themselves on whatever procedure they're doing at any time, to potentially improve their performance from 230 to 300%, and just making sure that no matter who the patient is, wherever the patient is, they're always receiving the most optimal procedure with the most optimum proficiency from the team universally. And that's kind of the dream and the vision.
Very cool. Well, one thing, I've lost track of time. Wow, we've been talking for a long time.
You get time dilation in VR. We're putting a clock in the next version.
That's a great idea. Well, this has been very cool. I mean, am I missing any critical points? Again, I've lost track of time. Normally I try to keep this to a half hour, but clearly
I think,
place you want to spend time.
I just ask you, how do you feel in here? Like, I'm saying a lot about the feeling and how everything looks and how important that is, but I'm curious what your experience is.
I feel very comfortable. I think the space, as we described, is very clean and open and almost space age, but more personally as an experience, this is definitely a more stimulating than a Zoom call for sure. And it's definitely not as stimulating as an in-person. So it definitely is that between teleconferencing and in person, but I feel more engaged. I've spent the entire time looking at you in the eyes, even though, you really can't see me. I've been smiling the whole time, even though you can't see a face. I haven't quite figured out what to do with my hands. I think I held them up for most of the hour and my arms going to get tired. I'm like, why don't I put these down? But for some reason I'm geared to here, but it definitely is, it's a different reality than what we actually live in. And it's a place where I could see being very conducive to training and learning and a place you want to return to. And I will give you the headsets back. I was just joking about that.
Well, it's amazing, Tom. I really appreciate being on the show, and even more virtually than usual. And, thank you for all the work you do in our space and all the coverage. I get a lot of my information and insight from you, and just for your long-term support and belief in the company.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on the podcast and for opening your operating rooms with us.
You're welcome anytime.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Now is the time for us to do what, Chris Newmarker?
Tell people how to reach us. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Newmarker, just like a Newmarker.
And Danielle Kirsh, where can folks find you and follow your Theranos coverage? I shared it today on LinkedIn, Thursday on LinkedIn. You're doing some really great stuff. They should really keep tabs on what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm posting both on LinkedIn and Twitter. On Twitter, I'm Danielle_Kirsh, Kirsh, and I have the same name on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Yeah, people should definitely connect with you on LinkedIn and follow you on Twitter. And I can be found on Twitter at MedTechTom. I'm on LinkedIn, Tom, Salemi. When you do connect with us, that'll enable you to share or tag us when you're sharing this podcast, which we would love you to do. Please share this episode on those social media channels. Please do tell your friends. Please do subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. The podcast we put out last week, by the time I opened up my laptop on Monday morning, we had over 1,000 plays. So there are a lot of people subscribing and getting it before we even post it on our websites. Awesome. And on social media. So you should get the news first.
Like, follow, subscribe.
There it is. We need to get working on that merch. So it's ready for our Device Talks Boston.
I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk tomorrow.
Should I wear a dress shirt at Device Talks, or am I going to get my polo shirt with the Device Talks logo, or I'm not wearing a costume?
I'm thinking black turtlenecks. All of us. What do you think?
Black, I like it. Yeah,
that always works. That always represents well.
You see somebody wearing a black turtleneck, you're like, that person knows things. That person.
All right.
Whatever they're saying is true. Cool. They're wearing a black
turtlenex with like, follow, subscribe in the back. I think that's where we'll go.
Love it.
All right, cool.
Love it. I think we got it. It's good.
Tune in next week, folks. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks, a weekly podcast waiting for you.
Enjoy the fall.